This is Gemara Metziah. Excuse me. Excuse me. Daf Samach Ches. And we're holding the bottom of Samach Zayin Amid Beis. We're about 13 lines from the bottom. The two dots Pshita. As we continue the scenarios of a malveh, of a loiveh with a mashkin. Again, if I borrow $1 million from you and I take of my field and I put my field up for collateral, so you have the rights to my field. So the question is, at what point can I pay back the loan potentially? What point can I get you out and get back my field? So says the Gemara Pshita, the following is obvious. Ba'asra de misalki, this is a term that we saw in yesterday's daf very heavily. Asr de misalki means that the borrower is allowed to come back and say, here's the money I owe you and get out of my field. V'amar loy misalikna. So in a place in which the borrower is allowed to do such, however, the malveh says, I'm not going to allow you. There's the date of repayment. Until that date, I am not leaving this field. Says the Gemara. So he made such a condition, and therefore we have to go with his terms. You borrowed money. He said, I'm not leaving before January 1st. Very good, you have the cash in December and you want to get him out of your field. But he told you he's not. Ella, but says the Gemara, Ba'asr delay misalki. What about in the reverse? A place in which you usually do not do not have the ability to get the malva to leave early. V'amar. But in this case, mistalikna, the malva said, I'll be nice. If you have the money early, I'll leave. What is the halacha? Sarech lemikna minei oy loy. Does the loiveh have to do a form of kinyan? Do they have to make a kinyan in order to make this tanai binding or not? So asks the Gemara. Rav Papa Amar Loisarch lemikna minei. Rav Shishis brother Rav Idi Amar Sarch lemikna minei. The Hilchasa says the Gemara. What's lamaisa the halacha? Is a kinyan necessary to put into effect this tanai created by the malveh? Yes. Sarich lemikna minei. Case number one of the day is in order for the malveh to obligate himself to leave in the event that the loiveh has the money earlier. Be'asra, in a place which that's usually not the minhag, you need to make a kinyan. Amar. Excuse me. Amar Ezel Vaisi Zuzi. If the loiveh says Ezel Vaisi Zuzi, I'm going to go and get back money. Therefore, he tells the malveh, please stop eating, consuming, utilizing this field. The malveh's been on the field, eating the peiros, etc. The loiveh says, I'm going to get the cash. Enough. Don't touch the field anymore. What's the halacha? Lo yachol. The halacha is the malveh is no longer allowed to eat, to utilize the peiros of the field. If he says, Ezel v'atrach v'aisi zuzi, but if the loiveh says, I'm going to go, I'm going to try, I'm going to eat matriach to bring you back the money, then Ravina Amar Achar Mar Zutra Bridin Rav Madri Amar Lo Yachol. And in this case, what's the halacha? The Hilchasa Lo Yachol. He's not allowed to eat, even though the loiveh is not clear that he has the cash and he's going to have to go and be matriach to get the money. Lemaisa, the halacha is, once he tells the malveh he's going to get the cash, he's no longer allowed to eat from the peiros. Rav Kahana v'Rav Baba Rav Ashi loy ochli b'nechaisa. Will not eat even within the normal amounts of nechaisa, the normal amounts of reduction, as we spoke about in the previous daf, that a field is normally reduced at a certain rate, and therefore that should be the amount that the malveh should for sure be able to consume. Rav Kahana, Rav Papa, and Rav Ashi didn't even do that. Ravina, Achal ben Achaisa, that amount that they did. So says the Gemara, let's understand what's going on. My time with the Mandacha ben Achaisa. Mi did Avias. It's the same din as a stei achuza. What's a stei achuza? So we look at Rashi, 2 lines from the bottom. Rashi fills us in the pasuk in Vayikra that says, "L'ftaisam in hektish v'ashanim shari yovel sela podin l'shana kvi cheshboin 50 shekel." Excuse me, kvi cheshboin 50 shekel lebeis derech chaymer soyer in l'arba. L'arba invitation shanasa yovel. That a stei achuza, an ancestral field, there's a regular amount that could be utilized per year within the 49-year time period, as a field would go back at year 50. So stei achuza, when it comes to stei achuza, explains the Gemara, lava avagav de kachal peri tuva, even though he's eating a lot of peiros every year, still, Amar Rachmana, still, what does the Torah say as we turn over to Zamches Amar Aleph? Kaparik La, it's redeemed by a set amount, Barbaim Zuzi. There's a set amount of Arba Zuz, 4 Zuz, Rashi says, which is 1 Selah a year. So even though the amount that you could redeem the field is not equal to the amount that the field produces, still, that's Xer Zaikasev of how you redeem the field. Hachanami loishna. Here also, when it comes to a regular mashka and regular nechaisa, the regular devaluation and reduction of the field, it's the same thing that the lender is allowed to utilize and gain from the field that amount each and every year. So that's the man Amar that says you could, yes, utilize the field. Man Asar. What about the man Amar that says you do not even eat that amount from the field? Amar Lacha, he's going to respond, what's with this raya from stei achuza? Stei achuza, hektishi. V'rachmana okmi apidyon. And it's a special din daraisa that there's a din to redeem it. Halcha halvayi, it's a regular loan, and therefore, and this really brings out the crux of what the potential issue is. Umechsi karibis. Looks like ribis. I lent you $1 million. I'm going to get back my $1 million, and I'm also going to be able to utilize your field at some level. Mechsi karibis. Continues the Gemara. Amar Ravashi. Amra li sabi demasya mechasya. Says Ravashi, the elders of Masya Mechasya related the following to me. Stam mashkanta. A stam mashkin is for how long? If you don't specify the time, shata, it's 1 year. Says the Gemara, lamay nafkamina. What's the relevance? The achala shata mati misalak lay. That once the lender utilizes the field for 1 year, then the borrower is allowed to come back and pay back the loan and get him out of his field. And if it has not been a year, like we started off today, so within that time period of a year, Stam Mashkin is a year, you can't get him out. Says the Gemara of Amar Ravashi, another din that the Sabi of Machsa Mechasya, Amrli Sabi de Machsa Mechasya, the elders Masi Mechasya said, my mashkanta, what is the word mashkanta, which literally means the pledge properly mean? Tishchuna gabei, it lives with him, it's living with the lender, from the term shachin. L'may nafkamina, ladina devar metzra, the din devar metzra, which is that a neighboring field has first rights to buy a field. Says the Gemara that if the loiva were to want to sell this field, the malve is the closest neighbor, as he's dwelling within the field, and he would get first rights of the field. Amar Rava, 10 lines down, the first line is Ladina, Les Hilchasa. The following we do not paskin like kitarshi pepunai, v'lo kishtari mechuznai, v'lo kichakiri narshai. 3 dinim, says Rava, are not lamaisa. Explains the Gemara, what are these three dinim? Kitar shai pepunai. What does it mean? The sales of pupunai. Kitar shai de Rav Papa. This is the sale of Rav Papa, which is what? So Rashi over here keys us in, going back to Daf Samachay. Schari loy pasid. Les also kavasei. My chaz doesn't basadi dachzel basad to do. You have to choose which amount you're going back. Go back to Daf Samachay. We pass like Rav Papa. Shtari machuznoi, which is what? The zakfalei the Rav Karna, that when they make partnerships, one person gives the cash, he would add on the profit that should be had into this investment. Because the bishtara of the karna, because the bishtara, and they write it into the shtar. Mi yemar davi ravcha. And the reason why we don't do like the shtari de mechuznoi, because who says that there's going to be a revach, and therefore that's the reason why we do not go like the shtari pupuna, the shtari mechuznoi. Excuse me. Amar le mar bar meimer le Ravashi Abba Avid Achi. My father Ameimar lemaisa would yes do like the shtari mechuznoi. Except for when someone came and he realized that lamaisa there was no revach, and he believed them, then he didn't collect that part of the business venture. Amar lei, says Rav Ashi, Teinach echa disalididei. Very good when he's there at the time of payment, therefore you could see if you believe him or not. What are you going to do if he's not there? He's not there, so there's no way to tell whether he's telling the truth. Says the Gemara, Have kishkaga sheyatzim hashalit. These words of Rav Ashi were like a shkaga, like an error that went from the ruler, meaning the words of Sadiqim are fulfilled, even not always in their context that they were meant to be said. And guess what happened? Unfortunately, Noch Nafshei, the Amimar was nifter. And the third din that Rava said we don't go with is Chakirei Narshai, which is what? Tachsivei Hachi, that in Narshai they would write in the document when there was a mashkin le planya area. They would say, so-and-so put his land up, a mashkin leplanya, for such and such lender, v'hadar chakra minei, and then he leased it back to him for such and such a year. Emas kanya da kanani alei. And the reason why we don't do this is because when was there a kinyan? When was there a kinyan? Meaning, when was the malve kaina, so that he could go and lease it back to the loive? So therefore, we do not go like the chakirei narshoi. Says the Gemara v'inna. But nowadays, the kakasei hachi, nowadays that we write as follows: kanina minei v'shahinai kama idana. That we write in a mashkin's document that the malva is making a kinyan from the borrower, v'shina kama idana, and he's having it for a certain amount of time. V'hadar chakra, and then the borrower is leasing it back. Today, tinol delos if they love him. We don't want people not to lend money, so therefore we allow this to happen. Therefore, shaper dami. Therefore, we can continue like chakiri narshai. It says the Gemara lemaisa, b'lav milsahi. This is not correct. Why? Explains Rashi over here right before the Mishnah. Tafilu shia nami aser. Why? The ribis gemurahi. She'ein kan safek oisav ha'oichel shepamim moitziv ein anoitel l'maisa. You're always going to be getting more. Therefore, it's bona fide ribis. Therefore, it concludes the Gemara. One should not write such a document. We move on to the Mishnah on the bottom of Samachesam and Aleph, a famous Mishnah in the world, in the very, very practical world of halvayos, of loans, which is going to be the famous heter iska. It's going to be the business venture that we're going to refer to as an iska venture. Says the Mishnah, Ein moishivin chenvini lemechsis schar. We do not set up a storekeeper with produce lemechsis schar to sell for half the profit. V'lo yitin ma'is likach ben peiros. Nor do we give money to buy peiros and then sell it to get half the profit. The only way we're going to give money to another person that he can buy the payrois and then be allowed to pay back profit is if you give him kischarai poyel, if you pay him like your worker. If he becomes your worker, then he could pay back as much as he wants because he is now working for you. You can't commission someone to set up chickens to make eggs. Can't commission someone for siachin and agalim, which are herdsmen raising these animals. Again, unless you pay him for his hard work. Aval, however, says the Gemara, Mikablin agalim usiyachin lemechsei umegadlin oisai achiu mishulashin v'chamar achei toyenes. However, what are you allowed to do when it comes to agalim usiyachim? You could raise them for half the profit, as well as megadlin oisan. You could raise them until they reach a third of their growth, and then or a chamar until it's able to carry a burden. So from here we see that this Iska venture is going to be the way it's going to be allowed. So let's take a moment to look at Rashi. Ein moishivin chenvini lemechsis schar. Says Rashi, Lo yimar bal bayis lechenvini harei peiros dimcharim b'shok b'arbaim arba asa b'sela. It's 4 asa per sela. V'ata meichem b'chanos pruta pruta. And you sell it piece by piece. Umishtakir sa. Therefore you gain. Hey loch peiros. I'm going to give you all the peiros. I'll supply the goods. You sell it. Here's $100 worth of goods that I bought wholesale for $50. You're going to sell it for $100. There's going to be $50 profit, and you're going to give back to me $25. What's the reason? Why? Because Tama Makabel Pragmatria says Rashi, when you accept merchandise, Makabel Vachrayis Chatzi Akeren Ba'insim. So the guy who's selling it has responsibility for half of the goods. Vizula Hilka Checha Palga Kivan the Machaiva Ba'insin Malvihi. Say it's you're obligated for anything that happens to half of the item is considered a loan. That's like Sharei Shuma Yatzlai B'Mayis Kishar Shuk. We evaluate it at the current price. V'dina lito chatzi schar. Nimsar, what comes out is asik v'chatzi shabal abayis. Shupi kadain. Half of it you have liability. Half of it you do not have liability. Etzloi b'scharim tanas mois. Hamalva lefika chaser. Therefore it comes out that you're borrowing and you're paying me back more than you borrowed. Schar hamtanas mois. You don't pay me when you get the goods. Again, I gave you these $100 of goods that I bought for $50, and you did not pay me $50. You sold them, and then you gave me $75. So that's called scharam tanas mois. Instead of paying for the goods right now, you pay me more. You gave me more at a later date. Therefore, says the Gemara, that would constitute ribis, and that would be ulcer, unless you pay him as a worker. If he's your worker, then he's working for you. And then you can pay him back what you want. Says the Gemara. Tana. And again, without going into extreme depths, but everyone can understand that every investment opportunity is this potential story. Because if I give you $1,000 and then you're going to eventually give me back $1,200, why are you giving me back $1,200? Because money makes money. That's called ribis. That is also very good that I got something cheaper that you're going to sell for a higher value. But lemaisa, you're paying me back more than I gave you. That's regular ribis, and that is also the only way to make a mutter is LMK Naislas Kischarai Kipayel, as we'll see further. Says the Gemara that you have to pay him like a pile. Tana kepayel batal. You pay, the storekeeper has to be paid like a payel batal. What does that mean? A payel batal, Mike, a payel batal. As we turn over to Samach Ches Amid base, says the Gemara, what is a payel batal? Amar Abaye explains Abaye kepayel batal shalisim malacha. Like a payel who's batal from the work that they are doing, the batal minei, that they're in the middle of doing. So the amount of work money he would take to not work for the day, Rashi says, Kam adam writes lito li batal mamlacha kveda kazu, this hard work. Blasses malacha kala. Once you pay him for that amount, then he is your worker, and then he's allowed on your behalf to sell your goods and give you back the profit. Says the Gemara Sricha. Why do we have to give two cases in the Mishnah? Why? Because a chenveni is not so much work. But he gives all money to buy payrois. The nafish tercha, there's a lot of work. It's not enough just to give him like a pile bottle. The second case I would have thought awesome. Who the bike a pile bottle? Maybe only in that case it'd be like a pile bottle. It's a lot of work. It's enough to give him a little mashu. You give him a little bit of a dip, it's enough to pay him. So you would have thought that should be enough. Sricha, that no, you still have to pay him like a payel bottle. So that's the reason why we had to give two cases in the Mishnah. We continue with the two dots, about 15 lines down. Tanu Rabbanan, 4 braisais, which the Gemara introduces with the simin kama, easy, tarnagoylin, mailin. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Gemara, kama huscharoi, how much is the schar? Bein meruba, bein mu'at, devir Meir. A Meir says the dollar value is not the relevance, just has to be some schar that you're paying the worker, the managing partner. Again, I give you the $1,000, so you're the managing partner, so you have to be paid something for your work. Whatever it is enough. Rav Yehuda Amar, if you look, no, you have to pay what his full wages would be for the work that he is doing. Brisa number 1. Brisa number 2, Tana Rabbanon. Ein shamin lo yizin. Excuse me, I apologize. Ein shamin lo eso yizin. V'lo yasara chelim. V'lo kol davar shein oisav ha'eichel lemechsa. We don't evaluate any of these items lemechsa for half the profit. You share off the hair, and you wash it, and it's rinsed and plucked. Because the mice, you can eat the eggs that it produces. Says the Gemara of Tanakama, says the Gemara, according to the Tanakama, it's not enough that which the animal produces. Answers the Gemara, begiz of achalav kuli amalei pligi. That's not the machlokes over the items that the animal makes. What's the machlokes? Keep pligi b'nisyuve v'totri. The machlokes is the way and the wool that the animal sheds naturally. Tanakama sarva like karajbi damar nois l'schar mishalem, and therefore that little bit that the animal loses on its own, the way and the wool that it sheds on its own, is not enough payment. And therefore, that little bit is going to be enough to be paying the worker. Tanu Rabbanon, and now we're up to the third brisa. About 20 lines from the bottom. The first line is Tanu Rabbanon. Maskeres isha lechaverta tanagoyles b'shnei afreichim. A woman can rent out a hen to her friend for 2 afreichim, for a set fee, 2 fledglings per year. Of course, this friend wants her hen to sit on the eggs to incubate them. Isha she'amar lechaverta tanagoyles sheli ubeitzim shelechi. If a woman says to her friend, the hen is mine and the eggs are yours, va'ani va'at nachloik be'afreichim, and we'll divide the chickens that come afterwards. If that's the arrangement they try to make, Rav Yehuda matir, Rav Shimon oiser. Rav Yehuda loy bayi, says the Gemara, schara malay u'mazaynai. I don't understand, asks the Gemara. How does Rav Yehuda allow this? This is a regular iska, and this seemingly you're not paying them. So how do you allow to split the profit? Says the Gemara, Ika Beitza Maizrais. There are the Beitza Maizrais, which that the hen owner keeps for their wages. These are the eggs that do not actually grow into chickens. And finally, Tanura Abanan, and with this we conclude a fourth brisa in arrangements of Iska Ventures. In a place where they do give the porter's fee in cash, someone who raises a behema malin, then you have to absorb that fee. Ve'ein mishanim iminig medina. Rashba goimer shaman agolim imay usachim imay. We evaluate the animal with its mother. Says the Gemara, how could that be according to Shem Gamliel? How could that be? You're not paying them. How you let it kick the profits? Says the Gemara, there's the glalim. There's the manure of the animal, which of course is a value. It's used as fertilizer, etc. The other Mandamer says, no, that's a mafkir, and therefore that can't be considered the payment that you make. Pick it up from the two dots, B'siyata Dishmaya.